Hello, everyone. Glad to be here with you today virtually. Kind of really enjoy this the virtual conference. It allows us so much flexibility, and I hope it's beneficial to you. And I'm sure you've seen some great presentations, either virtually or in person. So, my name is Dustin Wright. One of the founders of NextGen. NextGen is a remote support platform. And we're going to kind of get into that and talk about how we equip the local service provider with the ability to provide remote supports themselves. But first, I wanted to, I guess, just kind of give you a little bit of background about myself so you can kind of see where I've come from in my experience, because I think that is important if we are going to be trying to equip other people with the ability to do remote supports. So I started in this field as a DSP while I was in college. Didn't really know what I was getting into, honestly. I answered and I just needed a job. Answered an ad in the paper, newspaper back then. And went and did an interview in the basement of this group home. And I thought it was kind of strange. Why am I doing an interview in a house? And so didn't really understand it, but they told me I'd be taking care of people with disabilities. And I was like, well, that's great. I can, it sounds like a very rewarding job. Again, didn't know. Long story short, fell in love with the field as I was a DSP for 3 or 4 years as I was attending Purdue University. Now, that's where I'm based here, is West Lafayette, Indiana is where I'm coming to you from. Was a DSP and an ICF as well as a waiver home. We call them supported living here in Indiana for 3 or 4 years. And then after graduation, wanted to stay in the field and was lucky enough to have the opportunity to run that organization. It was a mentor network at that time. Ran their Northern Indiana operations for 3 or 4 years. And then one of our, another provider here in the area had an idea to start this new type of service called remote supports. Back then, we were calling it remote monitoring. Now it's called remote supports. But I went and met with him and he was explaining this concept. And I was like, yes, I want to be involved with that. So I was lucky enough to be the executive director there at Rest Assured, which is a remote support company, for 13 years. In that role, realized that there was this big cultural change that needed to occur within the industry and knowledge gap that needed to occur. People just didn't know what remote supports were. The regulatory environments weren't there. So I really worked with states on crafting remote support regulations and funding rate structures and things like that, but also out, talking with teams and just kind of spreading the word about remote supports. Doing that, I realized that there really wasn't any one entity across the US that was 100% focused on tech. And that was really my passion, is, seeing the amazing stories that were happening of the people that we were serving at Rest Assured. And I knew about all this other amazing technology out there. That's when I decided to leave Rest Assured and start Disability Cocoon. And Disability Cocoon is a technology, enabling technology resource hub and catalyst. So we're just there to get people information about tech, how to apply it to people with disabilities, and do it in a person-centered way. So that's kind of our mission. As I was doing that, was lucky enough to meet some people out in San Francisco, as well as Ohio, that we came together and had this concept, what if we could bring remote supports away or to the local service provider, meaning that the local service provider doesn't have to go contract with a remote support vendor that is distant several states away. The individual being served has never met their caregiver. And what if we could give the local provider the ability to do that? So that's kind of was the genesis of NextGen, which we're going to kind of talk about today. But before we do, I want to kind of jump into, and I'm going to share my screen now. I want to jump into a little bit about remote supports. For those of you that may not be completely familiar with remote supports and how they operate, I just wanted to kind of, set the basically make sure that you understand the support model and some of the important details that are really, kind of key to making sure that remote supports are done in the right way. So we're going to start with tech first, and Pennsylvania is a technology first state. If you don't know what that is, it is basically saying that, hey, as a state, as a disability system, we are looking to technology first before we look to other more traditional forms of support for a person, because technology allows for more opportunities for independence and more opportunities for autonomy and self-direction. So it's really an amazing tool to help not only the individuals that we're serving, but also an amazing tool to help agencies that are using technology to address workforce shortages and things of that nature. So when we're talking about tech first, there's this new term that's going around called enabling technologies. It was actually coined by Tennessee's Department of Developmental Disabilities. And enabling technologies, the way they defined it, is any form of technology that improves the independence of a person with a disability. So enabling technologies includes assistive technology in the traditional sense, remote supports, and then all of the other amazing tech that's out there, apps, telemedicine, telehealth, et cetera, that people are using to improve the lives and increase independence. So one of the things I do want to point out here before we get into some of the details about remote supports, I think when people think of remote supports, they think it's a tech service. And I guess it kind of is. And they may even equate it with assistive technology, meaning they're kind of one and the same. It's tech, it's tech, right? But they're actually very, very different. And the fundamental difference is that assistive technology, the definition is that it is a piece of technology that the person with a disability is using themselves to improve some functional capability. Hearing, seeing, cognition, moving around, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a device or a piece of software or hardware or application that the person is using themselves. So, a phone that the person is using with an app to allow them to, remember certain tasks, they are using it themselves. That's assistive technology. It's helping them to improve a functional capability. Remote supports are completely different in that the individual, honestly, most of the time does not have to use the technology at all. The technology is embedded in their environment and used by a remote caregiver. So the way that I like to describe remote supports is that it truly is just a person-to-a-person service. It's a different form of direct care in the traditional sense, meaning that it is still a caregiver supporting the person, but that caregiver is no longer, in the home supporting the person, is now doing it remotely through technologies. So I want to just kind of quickly give you an overview of the remote support model. So the first, we're going to kind of go 1, 2, 3 on the screen here. The first thing I want to talk about is actually the technology, oddly enough, that is installed in the person's home. So we have this graphic here with these little dots on it. I know it's probably pretty small, but again, these little dots represent the technology that is embedded in that person's home. And the technology that is used inside the person's home is going to vary significantly from vendor to vendor, meaning that one remote support vendor may have a certain list of technology, another one will have different capabilities, different technologies, but it's also going to vary based on kind of the layout of the person's home, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So some of the devices that are used are cameras. Cameras allow that remote caregiver to see into certain areas of the home. For obvious reasons, we're not going to want to use cameras in the more private areas of the home, such as bedrooms or bathrooms, right? Cameras are typically only used in the kitchen, living room, maybe looking at the front door, maybe outside the front door, looking at the porch for visitors, those kinds of things. Next type of device is two-way audio-video communication, so that remote caregiver and the individual receiving services can have a face-to-face conversation, kind of like we are doing today, right? So that remote caregiver can give supportive prompts and cues and coach through activities of daily living, socialize with the person even. So it just allows them to be connected and that remote caregiver to provide, support. So then the next kind of area is all of these other devices. And all of these other devices are, a list of sensors. Door and window sensors tell the remote caregiver when a door or a window is being opened or closed. Great for identifying when visitors are arriving to the home, detecting potential elopements, that kind of thing. Motion detectors that can be used throughout the home that can detect movement in specific areas of the home or movement anywhere in a specific room. So, maybe the person isn't able to use the stove independently without staff physically present because of safety concerns. Well, maybe you could have a motion sensor right near the stove that if the person is in the kitchen and, not near the stove, the motion sensor is not activated. But if they go over near the stove, it is activated. Pushing an alert, those kinds of things. Smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, bed and chair sensors that are going to tell you when somebody's in bed and out of bed. I've seen water flow sensors, so you can tell if somebody's in a shower. Great tool for people with a seizure disorder that may require somebody to be physically in the bathroom with them for safety reasons. Maybe they shouldn't be showering during remote sports times, those kinds of things. And again, the list of sensors goes on and on and on, varies significantly vendor to vendor. All of these devices that are here in the home, again, link this person who's receiving services back to that remote caregiver. Now, as we talked about a little bit ago, the devices that are in here are not, you do not get a box of, place your remote support order and a box shows up with this standardized list of devices that we were talking about there. That's not how it works. The way that it works is that the team builds a remote support plan, and the remote support plan is almost like a remote support mini ISP, if you will, on how remote support services should be provided to that person. What are the goals? What are the things we're trying to address, et cetera. Once you've got that individualized plan put together, then you're going to be working to determine which devices are needed in the home to address that plan, but also layering on top of that the person's preferences. So, a camera would be great for somebody that has a seizure disorder, right? Because you could see the seizure start to occur. But if that person doesn't want a camera in the home, then you've got to get creative and find another type of device that can alert that remote caregiver if a seizure happens. So it's tailoring the technology here to the environment to meet the needs in the remote support plan, but also tailored to that person's preferences. So again, all these devices are pushing alerts off to this remote caregiver here. This remote caregiver can be a variety of different people. It can be, as we've been discussing, a staff person or an employee of a remote support vendor. There are many around the US right now. They're stationed everywhere from Wisconsin to California to Indiana and Ohio and Minnesota. So they're everywhere. But, again, it could be one of their employees that is doing this states away. Our model, the NextGen model that we're going to get into here in a minute, is that we equip the local service provider, the local residential provider, with the ability to do remote supports themselves. So it is their employee sitting in their support center or their monitoring center that is actually doing the remote monitoring or the remote supports. So it could also be a family member or a loved one. Some of the vendors have apps that the family members can do this. Or maybe the family members are supplementing the professionals that are doing it. The professionals do it during middle of the night, family does it late afternoon. So you can kind of mix these up a little bit. So when this remote caregiver is providing support to the person through all these devices in their home, there are going to be times when that remote caregiver sees something that requires physical intervention. Let's go back to the stove example that we were using. They see the individual near the stove. They see a pot coming out, or a pan coming out. They start asking the individual, hey, what's going on? And I want grilled cheese. Well, they want grilled cheese, but they shouldn't be using the stove themselves. So that's a great example of when this remote caregiver would dispatch a local backup person out to the home to provide that physical assistance or be there physically as the person, prepares their grilled cheese. So that's kind of the model. And I think when people first think of remote supports, they think of it as the absence of a caregiver. Well, as you can see here, and as we've been talking about, it's actually not the absence of a caregiver. It is actually you're adding in another caregiver almost. You have the remote caregiver that's providing the support now, but you also have this local backup person that can get there and provide that hands-on support if that's necessary. So that's kind of a quick overview of the remote support model. I'm going to skip through that one. Remote supports can be done in a variety of different ways. And again, the method or the type of remote support service that is provided is going to vary vendor to vendor. And you can kind of see some examples here on the screen of some of the things that I've seen done. And some of the things that we are actually doing with the NextGen platform. So the first example is what I call active support. It's real-time oversight from a start time to an end time. The entire system comes on at a start time, let's say 11 p.m. Cameras come on, sensors come on, caregiver is watching everything in real time until the end time of 7 a.m. So it's real-time live support. Another option is what we call check-ins, or I'm sorry, let's actually do active on demand. Active on demand is just like active, but there's no scheduled times, if you will, for the system to come on, but the individual or the provider agency can call and say, hey, we need remote supports from 5 o'clock until 7 o'clock tonight, and kind of do it on demand. You can also get check-ins. And so check-ins are kind of what they say. It's just the remote caregiver checking in very quickly, typically centered around some activity of daily living for 5 or 10 minutes. Turn the system on, do a med reminder, watch the person take their medication, then shut the system off. The person's living in complete privacy. So it's just real short and kind of bursts, intermittent services, if you will. Another way that it's being done is this passive model where you would have all the cameras and the sensors and everything in the home, but only certain devices are on during the monitoring or support period. So you have cameras, you have all these wireless sensors, you have the two-way video screen, and all the cameras in the video screen are off, but certain sensors in the home are on and looking for situations. Let's go back to the motion sensor by the stove. There's no cameras on. Remote caregiver is kind of just waiting passively until that motion sensor by the stove goes off. When that goes off, then the remote caregiver turns the whole system on and jumps in and provides intervention and redirection, whatever is needed. Then you've got the family model, which we kind of talked about, where family members can be doing some of the support themselves in any of these ways that we're talking about right now. And then you've got this other layer of kind of medical monitoring, which is an area that most of the remote support vendors are doing, but are not doing it in a clinical sense, meaning that these remote vendors have employees that are the equivalent of a DSP. They're not nurses, they're not doctors, they cannot make medical decisions for that person. But what they can do is get readings from, a glucometer or a weight scale or pulse ox, et cetera, and then respond based on the remote support plan that outlines the acceptable parameters for those readings. If a reading is outside of this acceptable parameters, the remote caregiver has instructions on exactly what they should do. So they're not making medical decisions or medical evaluations. They're responding to readings and then notifying the appropriate person that can actually go out and help with that. It's a new area. A little plug here for Station MD. I'm guessing they're probably presenting at this conference. If they're not, they've got an amazing telemedicine platform that I would highly recommend you go look at. That's Station MD. So remote supports are being used for a variety of different things and for a variety of different people. I think when people first think about remote supports, they think that, this is probably only for individuals that are extremely independent. And that is a great place to start if you're new to remote supports, and it's a great tool for those folks. But don't limit the individuals that you're serving based on a hunch, right? There are some assessment tools out there that you can go get. We have some at NextGen that we can provide that help the team talk through certain aspects of the person's life to help the team determine if the person is appropriate for remote supports. There is no assessment tool that's you're going to go through and get a checklist and say, oh, yep, Bob's good to go, or no, Bob's not appropriate. And I've seen remote supports being used for individuals with some very significant behavioral medical needs even. It's all in how the remote supports are built into the plan, how the services are provided and customized to that need. So I encourage you not to think that remote supports are only for people that are very independent. The way that I like to describe it for people in kind of a simple line, I guess, and it's a very gray line, just keep that in mind, is that if the individual is going to be a risk to themselves or to someone else, if there isn't a staff person with an arm's length of them all the time, probably not appropriate for remote supports. So that's kind of again, a gray fuzzy line, just to kind of try to draw a line to separate who's appropriate and who isn't. So we're seeing remote supports used for all these things, and I'm not going to read through this list. Because as we've talked about, remote supports are customized to each person's needs and abilities, right? And preferences. So the things that remote supports are being used for are all over the board, because every person is different. Every person has different goals. but these are some of the very common things that remote supports are used for: visitor safety, cooking and meal prep, med administration, just general oversight, seizure detection, medical monitoring, etc., prompting through ADLs, those kinds of things. And what I do want to point out is social interaction. I think that when people think of remote supports, they think it's just, something happens in the home, remote caregiver responds, oh, hey, it's, are you okay? I got this alert. How can I help? That does occur. But there's also times when that remote caregiver and the individual are just talking, socializing, like a direct care staff person would do in the home with that individual. So those use cases are all over the board. So now that you kind of have an idea, and I've talked probably longer than I thought I was going to just about remote supports, I think it's important that you had that kind of intro if you've never been exposed to the service. Now I want to kind of talk a little bit more about NextGen and how we provide remote supports to, not how we provide remote supports, how we provide the platform to those, local provider agencies so that they can actually provide remote supports themselves. So I'm actually going to use a website that is in our website that is still in kind of draft form right now, but it's a great way, I think, just to kind of walk through what we're trying to do. So again, when I was working for a remote support company, we were, and all of the remote support vendors are very person-centered. I want to make sure that I'm not trying to degrade those remote support vendors, because they are great people, and their hearts are typically in the right place, and trying to increase independence and doing things in a very person-centered way. But again, they're remote. And one of the ideas that we had at NextGen, and one of our major goals, was to give the local provider not only the ability, but the ability to control how remote supports are provided, because they know the person the best. So now, instead of having a remote caregiver, distant a few states away, that has never met this person in real life, you can have the local provider doing this, that maybe the remote caregiver works a few days in the home of the person. How intimate is that? And the great thing is that you guys are there and local, and that you can control it then. So we wanted to kind of create a platform as a service, is what we're calling this, because it truly is a comprehensive platform. It's not just software, or not just selling hardware or anything like that. It is all of those things included. So we're going to give you all the tech, all the tools, and the training so that you can quickly and easily get this set up. One of the things that we wanted to do from a purely financial perspective, for an agency to go out and create their own remote support platform is completely possible. But it's going to be extremely expensive, right? To hire software developers, write the code, do the integrations, do testing. You're into the hundreds of thousands of dollars to build your own platform. As you've done that, or if you did that, you would also have this knowledge gap that you've never provided remote supports. So you can absolutely figure it out, but it will take you a significant amount of time to kind of get to learn how to provide remote supports in kind of a best practices kind of way. So we wanted to give the local provider the ability to do this without having to put all that effort in, and still allowing them to reap all the benefits of doing the remote supports themselves. So the formula that I like to use here is that it's our technology. We give you all the tech, right? We help you with our expertise. And then we partner with you as the local service provider, combining in your day-to-day knowledge of the person to create a more intimate form of remote supports for the people that you're serving, so that they feel that the service is more intimate, and that they're having a better remote support experience as they're doing this. I'm not going to play the little video here. You can go watch that later. So as I've kind of alluded to, our solution does include all of the hardware. We provide all of the hardware that would go into your support center. So the computers and backup systems that your caregivers would be running as they're providing the remote supports, we provide all of that. We also provide all of the technology, the cameras and the sensors and the two-way video screens that we were talking about that go into the person's home. So it's truly, you don't have to go buy anything yourself. We provide all of that for you. We also have written software that's actually pretty intuitive, and that was intentional. And we have, before I get into that, we have two different software platforms right now. One is the software that the remote caregiver would use as they're in the monitoring center. So it's the applications and the programs that they're running to provide remote supports. The other is an administrative portal. So there would be somebody within your organization managing the remote support services, managing that kind of business line. So we've got this administrative tool where they can manage all of the different aspects of remote supports. So one of the things, other big goals that we had was, having done remote supports for so long, and one of our other co-founders also started a remote support company. We learned a pretty valuable lesson the hard way. As we built our systems with these previous vendors, we would add a device and tie it into our system. And then we would add another device and tie it into the system. And after, 5 or 6 years, we had this kind of spaghetti web of software and code, and the user interface for the caregiver wasn't optimized, meaning that had we known everything that we wanted to build at the beginning and incorporated it all together into a very streamlined software package, it would have been much easier for our caregivers to use. But because we didn't know that, it became very complex, and the caregivers, it did require a higher skill set for them to be able to run it. So that's one of the things we wanted to do at NextGen, was to make it the user interface for your remote caregiver super simple and intuitive, meaning that you can hire a DSP level person as long as they have basic computer skills. They do have to know how to turn a computer on and click a mouse and those kinds of things, but it's that level of person that can run our software and provide remote support, so that you're not having to go hire anybody with technical skills. You can just use the DSPs that you already have in place. We obviously built the cloud and managed the cloud infrastructure that kind of connect all these different pieces together, that connect the homes to the monitoring center and makes everything work. We manage all of that so that you don't have to. We will also come out and help you obviously set up your monitoring center, set up the first few homes for you. We will actually be there in person installing these homes and training someone within your organization how to perform the installation of the equipment. So that is something that we will do initially, but then we, again, in a kind of a train the trainer capacity, push that off to you as the remote support provider to do that in an ongoing capacity. And obviously we're going to be providing lots of training to you while we're there in person, to both your remote caregivers, to the person that's managing this, to families or other people within your organization, on all of the aspects of remote supports. And I don't want to get into all of the training that we do, but we have incorporated it all into what we call NextGen University, which is an online training program where we keep all of the trainings up to date. As software changes and new features are added, we can go into this NextGen University, push out new content to you. So you've got training that is ready to go. So when you hire someone, you can literally put them down in front of this training program, and it will show them how to run the NextGen system and teach them best practices around remote supports. And we don't see this as a we sell something to you and then we're gone and good luck. We look at this as a partnership. We really do. Your success is our success, plain and simple. So we do provide ongoing support forever. So as you're providing remote supports, we are always there and available 24/7 to answer questions. If it's knowledge-based, a question comes up, if there's a technical issue, we're there to help, etc., troubleshooting things and working with you to help you grow your business as well. So that's what we do at NextGen. So we, again, wanted to kind of be breaking down barriers for you. That was really our goal. Again, we talked about some of the financial, the knowledge base, the technical capabilities, those kinds of things. We package it all up and give it to you in a way that you can be up and running within a few months and providing remote supports to yourself, so that you can maximize these opportunities for independence for the people that you serve. Not everybody you serve is going to be using remote supports, but you have it and can offer it to them as a solution and truly be kind of looked at as, a progressive agency that is providing remote supports. You're going to be able to really reduce your reliance on DSPs. And that's another huge benefit of remote supports that we haven't talked about. Imagine this super simple example. You have 15 individuals that you think are appropriate for remote supports. They all say, yes, I want to do this. You had 15 staff in those homes providing care. As you begin remote supports, those 15 staff can come out and can be filtered into other open positions within your organization. So significantly reducing your reliance on DSPs, and there is a financial benefit to your organization as well. Your labor costs will significantly drop. This is also a new form of revenue for your organization, meaning that, yes, you would be maybe even providing remote supports during times when the individual hasn't had service. So it's new revenue. Most likely you're going to be replacing hours of residential services. Well, when you actually run the numbers and look at it, doing remote supports the right way, you should be more profitable than you are right now in the current model. Yes, you may see a reduction in revenue, but the profit that you're keeping at the end of the day should be higher. So from a financial perspective, from a person's perspective, from an HR perspective, this is almost a no-brainer. Most of the next-gen customers are breaking even after about month 3, even after they've purchased everything and set up a monitoring center and all that. They're breaking even after month 3 on that investment. It's so low. Here's a quote from one of our customers, just so you guys know. I'm not going to read that to you, but you can read it. We've been building this for a little over 2 years. We had our kind of pilot customers, if you will, that were paying. But we had 2 customers, one in Maine, one in Illinois, that were kind of the first ones that we rolled this out with. They've been using the platform for over a year now. And we intentionally have not tried to expand yet, but to make sure that the platform was stable. We're confident, we're ready to go. They're confident in it. And we're extremely excited to see how we can kind of change the industry. So I wanted to talk a little bit end here about talking about our process. How do we go and help you set things up? So again, we really do look at this as a partnership. We don't want customers. We really don't. And that's not a salesy, tricky thing. It's we want people that are going to work with us on this. So again, as you grow your remote support business, as you do it well, that reflects back on us. And so that's how we kind of see that we're partners. And we want to make sure that you succeed. We also are looking for agencies that are innovative, that are ready to step out and kind of lead in this new tech era that we're operating in. Obviously COVID really did push this along, the tech agenda along, but I think that we're still not there as an industry. And we're looking for people that can be innovative and leaders within their communities, within their state. And one thing that I haven't hit on is that, we're not saying that you can only use our platform to provide remote supports to individuals that your agency is serving. You can provide remote supports to anybody that you want to. You can actually sell remote support services like these remote support vendors do that are out of state. You can sell those services to other agencies in your community. Again, another form of revenue. So this is our onboarding process. This is actually how we get things going. We have really 3 different phases. The first phase is kind of the pre-contract phase and the contract phase, where you will be evaluating the platform. We will be looking and working with you to discuss your needs, the people that you're serving, the goals, what are you trying to do, making sure that our IT systems are compatible, doing negotiations, talking, and making sure that we're right for each other. We may not be the ideal partner for you. You may not be the ideal partner for us, but we want to make sure that we do that the right way. So that's kind of the first phase. Once we've got a contract done, then we really get into the process of setting things up. And phase 2 is where we're really doing kind of planning and preparation, where we're looking at those IT integration considerations. Where's your monitoring center going to be? Who's going to be running this remote support service line? Who are your employees going to be? Assigning those roles, beginning some initial training with these folks, and also making sure that you really do understand your state's regulatory environment, and we do, and that our system is ready for that regulatory environment, and that you have the policies and procedures in place to ensure that you are in compliance with those things. Also, this is the phase where you would be working with the teams to identify who would be appropriate for remote support. So we really do recommend that you have a group of sites that you start with, somewhere between 4 and 8 homes that you would start with, because one, you'll get immediate financial ROI. 2, you're going to be impacting more lives. And then 3, you're going to have enough homes that remote caregiver can actually really start to learn how to operate the system, providing support to multiple homes at one time. So that we will guide you through the intake process for those homes, giving you the tools, the forms that you need to build those remote support plans, teaching you how to evaluate what equipment would be installed in the home, and really working with you to kind of begin to be ready to install, which is phase 3, where we show up in person and we install your monitoring center. We install the initial sites. We do that in-person training that we've talked about, both for all roles within your organization. So we will probably be on site 3 to 5 days, maybe longer, performing this training, doing all the installations with you, etc. Then you're ready to go, and you will have a fully functioning, working remote support business line that your agency can run and control, and provide a very, very intimate. I'm trying to find a different word than intimate, but that's just the word that jumps out to me. A more person-centered way of providing supports to the people that you serve and other people within your community or your state. So that is who we are and what we do. The website this website that we've kind of used to talk through NextGen should be launched here very, very soon. And love to talk with you if you're interested. You can email us at dustin@nextgenat.com, or you can call me at 765-430-0053. Again, hope that this presentation was helpful. I'm so passionate about remote supports, as you can probably tell. And I think it's just going to be an amazing option for our industry, for the people that we're serving, and for your organizations. So I would love to connect with you. Thank you very much for letting me be a part of this conference virtually, and hope the background noise wasn't too much. My kids are Friday afternoon here, and my kids are kind of coming and going. So thank you again. Hope to talk to you, Dustin, at nextgenat.com. Thank you.